Howdy, folks. I'm Caleb, and welcome to Influ-Men-Sirs, the podcast where we explore influential men and their influence on men and the broader conversation around masculinity as a whole. Today, we will be discussing Asmongold, or Zach Hoyts, one of the most streamed and notorious Twitch and YouTubers of the past several years. I am taking care of a newborn, folks, so you gotta give me a break here a little bit, but yeah, awesome. Well, with me, as usual, is a fellow Influ-Men-Sir, Nick Bies.
Hello.
Howdy. Good to see you, dude.
Likewise.
Right. Before we dive in, I thought I'd give a brief overview of the fellow we have in question for today, allowing Nick to fill in any gaps I miss as needed with my verbal Wikipedia report. All right. So, Hoyt, also known as Asmongold, is an American YouTuber, content creator, online streamer, and as of the past several years, right-wing political commentator. His initial content focused on World of Warcraft, which has since expanded to cover politics, video games, and gaming culture, and kind of all of those and how they coalesce. So, beginning in the mid-2020s, Asmongold made a marked shift from primarily gaming-focused content toward political reaction streams characterized by increasingly right-wing and reactionary commentary. One thing that I will say, just as a little note, he retains being somewhat leftist on particular things. Like he still, I know, Nick, it's already like, yeah, sure. He contends about universal basic income, which is really funny that that's a thing that things like folks like him and those adjacent. That's the one random leftist thing, whatever. And then also the right to choose, being pro-choice. But beyond that, a lot of other social issues. Dude is a little bit more right wing. So the broadcasts have frequently targeted progressive politics, immigration, multiculturalism, LGBTQ issues, while expressing support for authoritarian measures against political opponents and protesters. This shift attracted wider controversy, particularly after derogatory remarks about Palestinians, resulting in a 2-week Twitch suspension, which that was in 2024, but I think there was... Nick will probably inform us about some of the more recent phenomena. This stuff was from 2024. So, due to those comments in 2024, he had to resign from a leadership position at One True King and Starforge Systems, which I think is some companies that he helped found.
Yeah, One True King is a Twitch streaming consortium. It's back when they did organizations. Twitch streamers would join organizations to collaborate with each other. So that he co-founded that with a few people down in, that's the Austin crowd, Austin, Texas, is what people would refer to them as. So he founded that. They made a lot of money. He was also involved. Starforge Systems makes custom gaming computers. A lot of those same people in the One True King consortium of people also were involved with, creating Starforge Systems. So that was what that was.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yep. And he subsequently has continued expanding his political coverage, becoming an influential figure within the online right-wing media ecosystem. So for those that have been listening for a while, this was one of our first ones because now we're in the 20s as far as how many that we've done. We're kicking away, but it was around episode 6 that we did Hassan Piker on the other side of things. So anyway, we're now reviewing someone that is across the aisle, but maybe not necessarily in the healthiest of fashions. But I'm already giving away a little bit of what I'm going to ask for the first question, but I'm going to pass the baton to Nick. So I guess, yeah, first thing as always, what's the general impression you have of this fellow?
Exactly. So general impressions for me, I've known and been aware of Asmongold in the space for quite a while before he ever did anything remotely political. I personally was never very into World of Warcraft, but I was into other Blizzard games, and because that's they're one of their biggest cash cows. Um, they had him promote their other stuff. I was very much aware of who this guy was and just knew him as like, that's like the most subscribed to WoW streamer on Twitch. Like he just plays WoW all the time. And I guess he was good, probably. I mean, I don't know, or at least entertaining. That wasn't really my scene, so I didn't really, know about him much beyond him being pretty popular. And in some respects, there's, kind of jokes about, he's kind of the, oh yeah, kind of neckbeard WoW guy. He just kind of, lives in a gross house and just plays WoW all day. Like kind of the South Park episode stereotype. He kind of leaned into it from what I understood. So those were my very first impressions of him. And then as I've seen the online space change, I have very negative impressions of him now. Considering his hard pivot towards truly reprehensible beliefs, whether or not they're genuinely held or held for making money, is to be debated, but still espouses them and causes harm, I would say, nonetheless. So that's where I'm coming down on my impressions of him.
Yes, I would say that I am largely similar. Seeing like, those random YouTube thumbnails of him being like, the faces that you have to have on thumbnails for people to click on him. I would see this Jesus-esque kind of, neckbeardy looking streamer with lots of views. And I'm like, I don't know who that is. Okay, I'll go about my day. And then kind of as things progress and more and more what I had looked up on as far as when he had more truly blown up. And when I say blow up, like kind of in the more mainstream streaming consciousness, obviously he was always in WoW and he was a big streamer that, the other reason I brought Nick on is he and I are big gamers. Not everyone in the Influ-Men-Sir cohort is, but me and Nick are. So he was big within the, gaming community for sure. But then it's kind of felt like within the past couple years that has since shifted. And the thing that I saw that was sort of like the big turning point, or when he kind of like really started to, whether it's performing, whether it's revealing how he's always felt, we can never quite know. But when it really like propelled itself into, and Nick was sort of saying this too, but for those that haven't heard some of what he said about Palestinians, I don't even think it's worth repeating, truth be told. That airtime isn't needed, but just really inflammatory, derogatory things, along with many other things. But yeah, I think that there's a sort of idealization of being a loser. I don't think I'm trying to be mean or rude or like, I think the guy kind of wants it or kind of leans into it. And this is sort of why, again, when I thought of doing him as someone that we'd review, this is something that, I guess I'll speak for myself. You tell me if you agree with this, Nick, but I think that when you find yourself in your own version of the gaming world, right? Gaming is a huge community with so many different communities, honestly, within the major hubs. And it's kind of funny that Nick was really into Heroes of the Storm, and Asmongold is into WoW. I'm into Overwatch, right? So there's that Blizzard connection, right? And kind of the way that we all united in that front. But I just thought it was really particular as I started exploring him a little bit more, that a part of the brand is kind of being this. And again, some of these words he said. So I don't make a point on this show, even with people that I don't like, and this guy fits that mold. Even with those that I don't like, I don't tend toward ad hominem or just anything necessarily like that. But he said, degenerate. He said gross. He's called, slothful. Fill in the gamut. And I guess I'm curious. We'll kind of go into our normal questions as we go, but What do you think is with that brand?
So a part of it, I would say, because you are very much correct. Like he is very open about like I'm a slob, I'm disgusting. One of the famous stories he tell, like you can go back and watch videos of him and be like, oh yeah, well I have this wall, I call it the blood wall, because when I wake up in the middle of the night and my gums are bleeding, I just kind of wipe it on the wall. It's nasty, very gross. That's something he, openly shared about, showed, he did a house tour. So you showed you, oh, that's the blood wall. And it's like disgusting. Um, Lives in basically like a hoarder house. You can turn into a stream. You can see it. One stream, he had roaches crawling on him, and he's called the Roach King now. Ever since then, it's kind of a joke in his own community. So there is this kind of and it is what I would say, like it's a weird thing we would call it, like, oh, he's LARPing, right? Or pretending. He's like live action, like he's pretending to be this like man of the people, when really it's, I mean, of the people. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna be like I referenced earlier, that like that old South Park episode that where they made fun of people who played World of Warcraft. He's like, I'm gonna be that and cater to the people who are like me. Meanwhile, he is a multi millionaire. He has unfathomable amounts of money, more so than a lot of other Twitch streamers. He owns also, partially co-owns like a talent agency as well. So he made all of these business investments, but then puts this facade on of just, well, I mean, that's what I say. It is a facade because at any point he could just not live like that, but he does it on purpose. So he does actually live in filth and squalor for whatever reason. But he doesn't have to, because he does have those millions of dollars. So part of it is, I think, this I'm just like you type of communication, which unironically you see with also being that he's on the political right. That is something that you see from the political right quite often, is this I'm just like you, when in reality, and they'll put on like whatever, I blanking on her name. She ran for Senate in Georgia a few years back
Oh,
against John
Marjorie Taylor
Ossoff.
Greene.
No, not Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was like Kelly. I think it was Kelly something. But she ran against John Ossoff, and she's like, I might be wrong on this, but a billionaire, or if not, at least close. But then she kind of put on this image of I'm just like you, wearing blue jeans and like going down pretending like she was one of the people. This is a kind of a common thing among the political right. Now, Asmongold's been doing it before even pivoting to this like political spectrum thing, which maybe that's just how he does things. I don't know. But it's definitely now part of his very calculated appeal. Like on his end, at any point he could have, moved out of that house or hired people to clean it or what have you. And he has chosen not to on purpose, even still. And that is, I think, part of his cultivated image, which is even more important now as he is gaining sort of mainstream online. But I don't even know how mainstream, but like he's very large in like YouTube algorithms, Twitch algorithms. I don't know of any like mainstream media outlets that have really covered him. But that aside, he has a lot of influence in this, what we would call, right, independent or new media space.
Well, yeah, there's something about the way that that authenticity brand is so. I mean, it's nothing new, right?
Mhm.
When we had discussed Hassan Piker, kind of thrown out that thing of like, oh, you want to get a beer with him, right? And Asmongold kind of like fits that bill, but whatever a gaming equivalent of that is, right? Like, and I think that for the average gamer, right, that's, I suppose, who he has that appeal for. Again, part of why I specifically wanted to talk and work with Nick about this is both being pretty big gamers ourselves. We don't really necessarily have, he does not appeal to us. I can probably speak for you, Nick. But what is interesting about the appeal is sort of understanding, and this kind of feeds into our next question. I'll riff on this and then ask the question. But in a lot of ways, when I was growing up and had video games as a primary hobby, that was a big no. Like that was a you shouldn't do that kind of thing, right? And it was sort of like it's a waste of time. You could be developing skills elsewhere. Only nerds do that, right? And then we fast forward, right, a couple decades. Hell of a lot of people game, like a lot more people game now than that don't game. But it's interesting the way that, and this is where I'll ask the next question, which is, why do you think he has this influence over, broadly speaking, gaming culture, and specifically with men, right? Like, I doubt there's many ladies at all that are like, yeah, I'm gonna, 100 days in a row listen to this. I mean, I'm sure they exist,
It's probably at least
but
one.
one.
Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
But yeah, what do you think? Again, like I'm kind of prefacing this, you and I both being gamers, right? And in
Yeah.
some ways having that understanding of, oh, that's a lame hobby. Or, I mean, in some ways I'd love for you to riff on that, but then also how that ties into what you think may be his appeal with gamers in
Right.
general.
Well, so he is a bit of a holdover from, I think, gaming as a whole. I mean, obviously, it's been on a steady rise in popularity for decades. More and more people have like, you look at Pokemon, right, in the 90s, and there's so much. South Park made an episode making fun of Pokemania, right? This whole cultural movement, or this craze, and people are like, oh my gosh, I got to watch this, and then the show's giving my kid seizures, and so like that. He is this kind of, I would say, a bit of a holdover from when gaming was this more like, oh, you're like neck bearded weirdo basement dweller, right? Like
Sure.
he is a bit of a holdover from that time, and he embraces that identity. He also, now I don't remember exactly how much, if at all, he was involved with the original Gamergate, as they called it back then, or they still call it. It's a whole, um, it was a whole mess of cyber stalking a games journalist because she was a woman, and it ends up being like, oh well, like, and now he will, like, his takes as he was leading up into this right-wing pivot, and even still are kind of summed up in, why are titties not bigger in my video games, or why'd you make the woman look like a dude, like why are you wokeifying my game, like just make, like, let the woman be hot, like what the heck. And that was kind of the commentary, and you still see it in his community, in his chat, when you a fun thing is you watch like a PlayStation event or whatever, he's streaming game reveals, game trailer announcements, some big like E3 when that used to be a thing, or whatever they do now. I can't remember, I think it's the Summer Game Awards or whatever.
Yeah.
He'll stream that, and you open his chat. The second a woman comes on screen, everybody's like, woke, 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 woke in the chat. Just like by the presence of a woman, they're just like, this is woke crap. Like, it's DEI, it's this, it's that. And so that really, I mean, that has, when we talk about being a gamer or playing video games, like that has been like, it has traditionally been associated as this kind of like boys hobby kind of thing. Like, especially in like the 2000s, right? It's like, girls don't really play video games. They totally do, but games were not catered to them. And that's obviously what this Gamergate reaction was, is a bunch of like weirdo, socially maladapted men and boys who are feeling like their hobby, their safe space, is being taken away and invaded by women. And that, they cyber stalked this journalist. They did a whole bunch of other, unhelpful, not great things. Generally just, made the world a worse place. Like I said, I don't know what his direct involvement in that whole saga was, if any, but I do know that his grievances and the image and the things that the community has cultivated and the things that he says now are very much coming from that world of the, Gamergate, quit wokeifying my games. I don't want this. Like, why did you make the ninja in this game black? There's no black ninjas. Oh my God. Historical accuracy. And then, but also I need to see boobs on a woman that would break her spine in half. It's not really a congruent or, like worldview. Like there's no internal consistency there. But aside from, misogyny and white supremacy.
Well, there's also it's so much of it is male power fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this we're going to speak to, right? And this is not going to be something where Nick and I are like, oh, we're so above that, or oh, that's never been us in the past. I mean, Nick, I think a lot of times when I was gaming, when I was younger, there was some element of that, right? Being a little bit more quiet and soft spoken and kind of being able to use video games as an outlet to display power, to, have supposed strength. But I
Exactly.
think that to Nick's point, there was a kind of gatekeeping that was true for games that it kind of felt like, I mean, this again, in some ways, this has been true for so many things around the mid 20 teens. Things kind of like burst onto the scene. They were always like simmering, right? It's not that there was none of these issues before then. It was all great, right? Like by all stretch, no. But what seemed to happen is, like he was referencing Gamergate, 2014 journalists. I mean, that's its own thing, right? And in some ways, it's not necessarily directly connected to Asmongold. But I think that he represents this sort of old guard of gatekeeping this hobby, which is video gaming, and sort of the last hurrah of it. Kind of in a broad sense, is kind of what the MAGA movement is too, right? It's just this, in my opinion, this last cry, this last like flail, so to speak, trying to resist an increasingly multicultural, multi-ethnic, globalized context, right? Wanting things to quote unquote go back to the old days.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like those old days for, and in this case, it's women gamers, but in previous episodes that we've done, whether it's people of color, whether it's all these different things, it was not that sunny. And so in some ways, feeding right into the next question, what do you think the masculinity that he has on there, and then some of the clip farming, these reactionary takes, and maybe even some of the stuff that was before this abrupt right-wing pivot? What do you think his masculinity is saying about, or how is it interacting with women in his life, kids, other men that he knows, whether it's his friends or things like that, just general connections? What does this say?
Yeah, it's overall pretty poor. It is very stereotypical of what, again, going back to this, it kind of feeds into this stereotype of I'm kind of abrasive, I'm harsh. He's like, I say the truth, I just say it like it is. Very much, MAGA, like, oh, well, if you don't like what I have to say, well, it's the truth, and like, it's not like you can't just say an entire society is barbaric and deserves to be eradicated. That's not just the truth. That's just Nazism, right? Like, so there is a very much a toxic, we overuse the term toxic masculinity, but it's very much like, it's just kind of like, okay, man, even people who are like, I don't know about this concept of toxic masculinity, it seems a little, they're like, oh, I see what you mean when you point to this guy. Like, oh yeah, okay, I guess, all right, that makes sense. I can pick that out. His, when it comes to his relationships with women, it's very much, you talk about his like very overtly sexist worldview on specifically gaming. It's just very, very misogynistic. very much like as we kind of this male power fantasy, but like, oh, like, oh, didn't, why is this woman, like, why does she have a mustache? Like, why are you trying to wokeify the gay? It's like, okay, that's not like, people have hair on their face, man. Like, I don't know. Maybe you've never seen a woman that close, but which was the joke that everybody immediately, when he made that comment, everybody's like, oh yeah, well, because it's like, okay, yeah, he's leaning into the stereotype there of being this like, loner person with no relationships, to the point where, very weird, like the last few months, he made some comment about a comedian, like got very mad about like he had made some comment about Asmongold, and Asmongold saw it, got a little upset, and just kind of, it's like, oh, well, you're fat, and like went on a tirade for like 15 minutes calling this comedian like super fat. And it's like, yeah, he knows he's fat. That's his whole thing. Like, he's a fat dude and makes fun of it. Like, I don't know. But then, that comedian saw it, was basically like, yeah, it's because, because you get no ladies. You have you got no pull. You're getting nothing. And then like a month later, it's like, oh, hey, check out my girlfriend. And it was like some girl he paid to do a collaboration and like pretend to be his girlfriend for a couple weeks. And this was like a couple weeks ago, I think, before his latest ban. But so there's very clearly this this relationship with women that is very transactional. It is very much not relationship whatsoever. But it is very there's a commodification of the female body, the just women in general are seen as kind of as commodities to him. At least maybe that's not what he personally believes, but in order to make money, that's what is presented. So it's one of those two. So yeah, overall that his interactions with those around him previously, before the pivot, would have been a little bit more positive. Like, he did have interactions with women. Supposedly he had a girlfriend that was also streamer, and it seemed a little bit more, chill. There was still that kind of like, I'm a little neck-bearded gamer, but there was more camaraderie, a little more collaboration. But since the kind of right-wing pivot, it's turned into a very isolated, he's become very isolated by his own rhetoric from those around him, as he had to step down from these companies because of horrifically racist genocidal language that got him banned for crazily only 2 weeks, but whatever. So his whole presentation of masculinity and its relationships to those around him is very stereotypically negative, almost a caricature, if you will. It seems
Totally.
wrong.
No, I think you said it really well there, right there. This idea of it being a caricature. I was sort of thinking earlier in my notes, just kind of this idea of he's almost like feeding right into this idea, and it's something I'm percolating on, so maybe you can help me refine it as I describe it. But this sort of like male groupthink that cruelty is just the way guys are. Like, it's just a given. And I think that in a strange sense, there may be a developmental stage of us as people, right? Especially with men or young boys, teens, where you kind of, I mean, I see this a lot with my own clients, right? Well, they will describe a season of their life where, they were, for in their own language, edgelordy, right? Like, cringe, leaning into saying things that are in this provocative manner, right? And again, that's not the sake of the spot, but the past decade or so, this has become more a thing that has infiltrated so much of our day-to-day lives, and things that hit the algorithms and things that we're exposed to, right? But I think the thing that I'll see from him and many like him is this, and maybe that's not the right word, but it just feels like it's groupthink. It's just this assumption that, oh, well, men at their default, they're just cruel. they're just harsh. They're just cynical. Um, and I think I remember, Nick, you had sent to the little group thread that we have a video. I forget the creator who had made it, but they were essentially talking about like, why is cruelty in? Like, why is that the cultural barometer that like we're wanting, right? We can say, well, it sells. And then, okay, end of pod, right? that may be just something as simple as that. But yeah, if you have a comment on that, I want to cite something that I've been reading lately. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like the concept of, I mean, cruelty, it's being sold as realism or like tough luck, buttercup, that's just the way the world works kind of thing. And it, to a great extent, yeah, the world is a very cruel place. We should not be, we should be very realistic about the cruelty of our world, right? Lots of horrible things happen all the time. Now, the problem with what he's selling and, this kind of groupthink is it's, no, cruelty is the point. For example, I want to make people I disagree with suffer. I want people to hurt. And that is very much a thing. I would say it is mostly on the right that we see. This is something you see in a lot of, it's like you definitely with like Asmongold and his rhetoric and like, it's like, yeah, no, just like I would shoot the kids too. Like, what an insane comment to say. But like for his most recent ban, but the like you'd see like the rise in super like neo-Nazi right-wing fascist mass shooters from these online what they call terrorgram communities. The cruelty is the point. They want people to suffer. Part of it is I want you to suffer the way I feel like I have, or you've wronged me and it must be dealt with in this extreme manner. And as society becomes more violent, you like that these violent ideologies, which Asmongold does espouse. Now he oftentimes tries to, well, I'd say tries to toe the line. It's now twice in the last couple years where he's just openly said Hitlerian things. Like, that's not controversial to say whatsoever. It's just lines right out of Mein Kampf, basically. That other than those, like they're Asmongold maybe a little bit less so, but many very right wing figures. You look at like Nicholas Fuentes, who just 5 years ago was obscure, nobody knew who he was. Now he's like best friends with Asmongold. Asmongold, his co-sign, hey, Nick Fuentes, that's a great guy. I believe I'm with him 100% of the way. Like, go listen to him. Who is Nick Fuentes, by the way, is an avowed neo-Nazi, very open about it. So you have these extremist ideologies on the right that are very much geared around creating an outgroup and punishing them with violence. So as those ideologies fester and grow on the internet, now this is the one silver lining here, I would say, is it's still mostly on the internet. Not to say that fascism isn't growing at an alarming rate. It obviously is. But I bet you if you go out into the real world, if you go touch grass, right?
Hey.
As something Asmongold does not do, and many in his community do not, you go out and ask them, hey, you heard this? Do you know who Asmongold is? And people are going to look at you like you just like said the rapture is happening or something. You're not going to be, most people don't know who this guy is. That's great. But the ideologies that he aligns with are doing and having a serious impact. So that kind of groupthink with cruelty being the point, while, yeah, he might not be very directly responsible for what you might see out, I don't know of any mass shooter who's like, I love Asmongold, you know.
Right.
Not to say that it won't happen. Hopefully not, but you know, that's when you consistently espouse very racist and genocidal language targeting Muslim people, it's, you know, eventually the stochastic terrorism that you're doing will cause harm. It's just that when you have 30,000 people watching you, 40,000 people watching you, it's, you know, just takes one. So, that's kind of where I would come down on like that. He is definitely part of this broader, uh, right wing to neo-Nazi ecosystem on the internet. And he is probably one of those entry points where somebody might say, hey, oh, I remember Asmongold. I used to watch him when I was back into WoW like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I want to get back into WoW again. Like I have time now. Like I want to get back. Oh, I remember watching him. Let me tune in. And then slowly it's like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, well, yeah, why are they ruining my video games? I mean, I don't really care, but he's making some I wouldn't say his arguments are convincing, but you know, some people might be drawn in by the, let me go, you know, for nostalgia's sake, back to my old streamer and get roped into this kind of pipeline. You know, you say something convincing enough to somebody who might not be educated, they might just take you at your word, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of where I see him playing into that kind of space.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we can in some ways talk about the schematics of and the function of how a lot of these, I mean, so much of it just feels like it's right wing grifting. Because the thing is, obviously there are the Fuentes and there are the other folks that really adhere to this stuff in a, it's all distressing, it's all alarming. I'm not saying that it's not, but there's a sort of, because isn't it just so funny? Like it's just the biggest thing is that it's comedic. Like
Right.
that's a bigger point than the fascism or the sexism or the racism or the any of the isms. It's just how funny it quote unquote is. And so oddly enough, this is kind of a good point to pivot to the next question, which is what do we think he Asmongold Zach Hoyt, what do we think that he's highlighting through his rise and kind of this pivot and all that? What, as strange as it may sound, is he highlighting around the plights of men's mental health?
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, you go back to the caricature. Like he's playing, like whether he's playing a part and when he shuts off his computer, he's a different person. He's like, oh, I mean, I don't believe any of that. Ha ha ha. But at least I'm making money. It's like, okay, well, you at least have a little bit less of a soul at that point, I guess. Like, not literally, I don't mean it, but it's just like you very
Yeah.
clearly have no morals. But in doing so, playing that character he does, again, whether it's just genuine, like this is who he really is, or not, it brings to light that kind of what we've known for a long time, that same kind of like, oh, like I don't, you know, I don't socialize, I'm awkward, I don't like, you know, like I'm a loser gamer, no girl wants to go out with me kind of vibe. Something that's just like, look, you gotta, so it, which is something that lots of men when they were children in high school, or and I'm not going to say like it goes away automatically. You have to, you know, practice and stuff. And obviously, lots of adults have a lot of insecurity about themselves as well, and a lot of men have a lot of insecurity about themselves. You know, patriarchy hurts men too, right? So when you try to go interact with a woman, or like, oh, I think she might be kind of cute, but like, I can't talk to her. Like, I'm just too nervous. Like, I don't have the confidence. Um, like he speaks to that quite a bit. And that is, I think, definitely, I mean, it's problematic now. It's always been an issue. I don't think it's ever gone away.
Right.
I think it's been you could go back to the 50s before before there was internet, and there was still like, oh, look at that dorky nerd who can't talk to women. It's just like, okay, yeah. It's like we that's always been there. The form changes, but the type stays the same, right? And so he speaks to that quite a bit. I think directly as a caricature you can point to. I think he does also speak a little bit to the insecurity of the human person in today's modern society and the need for eyeballs to be noticed. So one of the things you can say as a criticism of Asmongold, and I've heard many point to this, is like he knows what will bang. Like he knows how to generate controversy. He knows how to get eyeballs on him. Like that's why he's doing what he's doing. And so, as many would call him and point to him as a grifter, right? He's doing this to make money, mostly insincerely in terms of potential belief in what he's saying. But what people have pointed to is like he has a need to be seen. So he was one of the biggest WoW streamers, and then as gaming started not pulling as many views, he saw, oh, if like look at like during COVID, political content started blowing up on YouTube thanks to the right-wing algorithm changes that they made. Like Ben Shapiro's popping off, like going gangbusters, which is hilarious because he's not anymore. He's washed up. Everyone hates him. It's pretty funny. But like on the right, everybody just said we don't want to play with you anymore. It's funny to me. If you like him, I'm sorry. But he notices this space change. And in order to stay relevant, he has what someone would say an existential need to stay relevant. And I guess, whatever, it's part of his job, but it's like, okay, well, I had maybe 20,000 viewers playing WoW. Maybe now I have 10 or 15 and I'm a multi-millionaire with all these businesses. I'm doing what I love. Shouldn't that be enough? That would be my criticism of that. But many people have pointed to it pivot at this time intentionally to try and cling to relevancy, the need to be seen. And that's something that obviously most of us can't relate to at that scale. I don't know anybody in my life who is like, oh, man, I need a football stadium worth of people watching me 8 hours a day, or I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to like go insane. But we have things that we can relate in our own lives, the need to be seen, the need to be heard, the need to be listened to. And I think one of the sad, tragic aspects of Asmongold is that need that is innate to all of us. And especially when you look at like patriarchy in our society, you're a man and you want to feel heard. Like, what are you you're getting whatever kind of like misogynistic slur or name you're going to get called, right? And so we sublimate that into this unhealthy, like, oh, I'm going to do stuff for clicks. I'm going to do stuff for, at the small level, like I'm going to act out amongst my friend group to get this recognition. Oh, could you believe what he did the other day? Oh man, he really told that dude at the bar off, like whatever. So there's those kinds of, I think, through lines in his character and what he's pivoted of that need that can be reflected in a lot of, I think, men in our society today as well. Obviously, again, not at the same scale and not the same kind, but it reflects that.
Well, and I think that you're also highlighting the performative quality is totally and specifically and particularly for men, right? And that's a lot of times how patriarchy actually functions. It's not about what anything that, Asmongold wouldn't, he's not in Manosphere. Obviously, he's Manosphere adjacent, but he's not. But anyway, so much of what the content is about is sort of your standing with other men. It has almost nothing to do with your actual relational standing. with the opposite sex, with the other the other gender. And so it's interesting. One blurb I was going to read, and again, Nick will get a kick out of this, and maybe some of the readers will. They're going to know just how progressive and woke that I might be through revealing this. So I've been reading this book. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. Maybe Nick is looking for his own copy.
It's like
perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. So the reason why I thought it was pretty apt. So as many of you may know, woke was used as there we go. There it is.
Sure.
Woke was used as a term specifically with the Black community in America to sort of like, hey, notice what the system's doing. Like, be savvy, be aware, right? And then obviously it's been co-opted to what it is now. As far as, the right saying every damn thing is woke. But anyway, there's this little bit where he's kind of talking about the way in which, and he's writing, this is like in the 30s and 40s. So this is literally almost 100 years old, but it's pretty much just as relevant now as it was then. But he's kind of describing how men in general are, well, not just men, but humans, but then specifically he's going to talk about young men are feeling a lack of belonging and disadvantaged, and talking about how a particular extremist leader used that to his advantage. So let's see. Several years ago, I was talking with a young German woman who had escaped from the Nazis, first to Holland, then France, England, and finally to America. She described for me the powerful magnet that Hitler was to German youth. The youth had lost their sense of belonging. They did not count. There was no center of hope for their marginal egos. According to my friend, Hitler told them, "No one loves you. I love you. No one will give you work. I will give you work. No one wants you. I want you." And when they saw the sunlight in his eyes, they dropped their tools and followed him. So I just felt like it's not necessarily a perfect parallel, but I think that where Asmongold kind of fits as the stand-in is for a lot of, I don't know, I would guess a lot of working class, probably uneducated gaming types that have stumbled across this content. This sort of like, and you mentioned it earlier, but like, I got you, I understand you, I'm here for you. The woke mob is coming after you, but I see it, and I'm going to be like a vanguard for you. But the issue, and we've been highlighting it, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't take as long on this pod as we've taken on other ones. But kind of the last bit here is where we kind of talk about how this has any like personal draw or things, ways in which this has affected us in that way. And I've mentioned it a lot, and thus far in this channel, I was a couple instances of whether it was lacking a mentor or certain dating contexts not going a particular way, where I would have been red pills, where I think I may have like fallen into some of the incel stuff, some of the maybe watching Asmongold all the time. And I think that he is providing an incredibly bastardized form of belonging for those who aggressively are operating in a way to not have belonging. They're so deeply and in some ways intentionally and comedically antisocial. And to me, I know I'm the therapist, so I have to say this, that just speaks to like wanton depression that's going more or less undiagnosed. And I mean, we've been really dogging on the right, the ideological right. And one of my grievances with the ideological left is the way in which a lot of the disenfranchisement of men in a broader sense, and the way that patriarchy has caused this, has not gotten its proper due in the sun. And so one of the reasons I just wanted to review this, guy, is I was like, man, this is just like the shittiest form of belonging ever. But I think for a lot of dudes watching, they sort of feel like maybe this is the best they can get.
Absolutely. And like you said, it speaks to there is in our society a crisis of alienation. And that, I mean, like Marxist thought would say that that's always been the case, right? And so and everybody would agree generally about the concept of alienation. You don't have to be a Marxist, communist, whatever, to be like, oh yeah, the alienation exists. Like if you're honest with yourself, you're like, yeah, oh, I put in, I go to work, I put in 40 hours of my life, I come home, I'm exhausted. I made the company $100 an hour, I got paid 15. Like that will wear on you. You're alienated from the value you create at your job. You realize that you're not being treated what you're worth in these places. And then you realize how much that it actually takes from you, on top of not being properly valued in those spaces, right? So we have, and then you look at like currently we're in like one of the greatest wealth disparities since the Great Depression, between the top 0.01% to, generally everybody else. So there's no wonder we are experiencing an inflection point of alienation among our population. Now, it used to be 100 years ago, the workforce was predominantly male. So historically, when we would look at like how does alienation affect society, it would be men alienated from their work. Now that's less the case. It's everybody, more egalitarian, in terms of, the workforce is, I don't know what the split is, but I know it's a lot more 50-50 or closer to 50-50 than it was 100 years ago. And so this response to this alienation, of we're going to make this community, but this community is centered around otherizing, right? Drawing these lines of boundary and saying you're in, you're special, they're out, they're, inferior, to use words that he has said himself about, whether it be Palestinians, or Moroccans. There is a very clear us versus them solution to that alienation problem, which is not a material solution. It is this esoteric spiritual solution. Now, I'm not saying that the spiritual realm is not important at all. I'm a Christian. I think it's very important. However, we fail in the West, in the United States in particular, on this front quite a bit. We over spiritualize so much of our issues, so many of our problems. You look at like the debate about firearms and gun control, and you'll see a very clear example of like, oh, it's a heart problem. If you ban guns, then only, there'll be a way. Like it's a heart problem. They'll find a way to just stab people. And it's like, okay, sure. Yeah. People will still try and do horrific things. No one's debating that. But that's kind of the solutions we have in the United States are very much focused less on material solutions, material actions. And they're focused on this, philosophical, that's rich to give it philosophy, but it's an implicit, I wouldn't call it an explicit, well laid out philosophy for most of this. But this kind of spiritualizing of the problem. So like Caleb mentioned, I as well, if I had encountered Asmongold, if I was 10 years younger in my development and I developed along these lines, oh yeah, I think he would be very attractive because of what the world we're bringing young men into right now. It is really, really not great. Now, of course, you can make the argument it's better than it ever has been. Look how much wealth that the United States has. Like you can get a private taxi driver for your burrito to your house. Like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, which that in itself is its other conversation for, give them bread and circus, they won't revolt, whatever. We can have that conversation about, economic policy and all that, whatever crap. But the main point being, our current state of the economy and not just in the United States, but globally, we see such disparity and loss of outcome. Like youth unemployment's going up. It's like we're creating the same conditions in 1920s and 30s Germany that led to what happened there. So it's no wonder that this is enticing. It's no wonder that this is drawing a crowd, in my mind at least. Especially given who has won the last election. Like, we're gonna put a rapist pedophile in the White House, then yeah, I mean the bar is in hell. Like, we're not like we're chasing this otherization to try and claw back some sense of meaning and autonomy. The classic thing is like if you tell, it was, I think it was it's either Lyndon B. Johnson. I might be misappropriating the quote, but it's like if you tell the poorest black man that he's better than the richest, or you tell the poorest white man that he's better than the richest black man, like, you know, he won't even notice when you're picking his pocket, kind of thing. Like, if you create these tensions and this otherization along, you know, racial dynamics, racial lines, religious lines, which is also ends up being talked about Islamophobia. It's still very racialized. It creates the conditions for the calcification of the in-group towards violence done to the out-group, which we're seeing. So I can say I'm very grateful that I got some sense knocked into me when I was growing up, and that things were not nearly as toxic on the internet back then as, I mean, they're pretty bad. Again, don't
You had to look for it. You had to look
for it. But then also too, like, I'm very glad no one can hear what I was saying in Halo 2 lobbies over the mic. You know, I was in
Same.
middle school.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, to close and to wrap, I mean, this is the big thing. I'm not sure, Nick, if you've been able to hear our other episodes, but the big thing that we've kind of like found consistently as like, this seems like some version of a solution, or what would really help is just genuine mentorship. I mean, what is, you know, Asmongold and folks like him, you know, Fuentes and Charlie Kirk before them and Shapiro. So much of that, it feels like it's speaking to a mentorship vacuum, and they'll just say these definitive, you know, quote unquote common sense things as a way to, you know, in some sense instill direction to otherwise aimless men that, like you're saying, there are systemic reasons why they're aimless. But the big thing that I think we're espousing, or that we're wanting to promote, is the importance of mentorship. So kind of do my little, like, you know, Nick will get a kick out of this, but my little like altar call, or my little like inspirational speech kind of thing at the end, which is whatever it looks like, you know, some version of being involved in the community. So much of this, the antidote is truly just like talking to your neighbor, talking to the person at the grocery store, talking to the, you know, that person that lives nearby that maybe you don't agree with, or that you don't necessarily get along with, but then you get to know who they are as a person. And a lot of this kind of reactionary content, cruelty, all the things that we've been saying, it sort of dissolves when you have a real human being in front of you, and both of you are holding hands and touching grass and singing Kumbaya. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, you are.
It's not a requirement.
No, it's not. It's not a requirement. But yeah, that's just that's my little sign off anyway. It's just like the antidote is really like connecting with other people. And again, this is two gamers. Me and Nick, we've had our days and nights where we have been in one too many matches many, many times, whereas that has been an issue. It's gotten in the way of things in our life. We can connect with that, or at least I will say I can connect with that. But big thing that's come to pass for me as I'm getting older and older is the love of gaming, the love of I'm diamond in Overwatch 6v6. I feel pretty proud about that, especially because they just changed the MMR, the ELO. So woot woot. It's for my buddies that I do play with.
There you go.
But yeah, overall that just that's right. But overall, just the mentorship, right? That's That's my sign off. I don't know if you more or if you kind of like, yeah, agree. But, I don't know.
Yeah, no, community connection is the antidote to cruelty in a lot of the ways. Community is the opposite of hate. Like it's not really, we'd like to say like, oh, love's the opposite of hate. It's like, well, yes ish, but it's connection, it's community. Yeah, like you said, especially to the caricature that we would see in Asmongold. Like, hey, like, yeah, you might be socially awkward, so was I. Like, you might be really like, very scared to talk to other people. It's just, if you're like trying to find you're like, oh, I'm going to be alone forever, I'm never going to find somebody who loves me. It's like, oh, well, you know what, just start by saying, hi to the cashier. Like, practice little social interactions. Those little points and touches of interaction and community. That's not really, community implies a little bit more commitment than just having a conversation at the grocery store, but that
Start
practice helps you genuinely prepare you to actually have relationships with other human beings in a much more constructive way. So if that's you're out there just like me, give that some practice. It does wonders. And you don't have to become like an outgoing extrovert either. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
You can be awkward AF. You can be nerdy. You can have the HD or potentially the TISM. I think you've told me. Maybe the TISM. We're weird. We're kooky.
We're out there.
We're odd folks on the Influ-Men-Sir cohort. So we're right there with you all. So, but yes, that was our show for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. The next one that we'll probably have on the docket is Mr. Rogers. Man, what a pivot. I don't know if you could have a more insane 180 than to go from Asmongold to Mr. Rogers. But
yeah, he's got a neighborhood.
Yes, he does. All about connection. Who would have thought?
Exactly.
But there it is. All right, folks. Hope you all have a good one, and see you next time. Peace.
See you next time.
Thanks, y'all, for listening to the crew blabber, laugh, cry, go on epic ADHD rabbit trails, and all things between. Like and subscribe primarily on YouTube and Spotify, and hope to see you on the next one. Peace.